sometimes it takes a push. You don't always have the answers yourself, and that's maybe sort of like a hard thing to accept. But I think like people have this idea of writers or artists that they're just these kind of like idea generating machines, and some people are touched like that. But I think a lot of it comes from just like trial and error and experience and sort of like being in the world and like, okay, well, like I'm doing this thing and I'm kind of getting bored. Like, how do I sort of like change my practice, or how do I like pivot to like a new subject matter? Like, how do and usually that involves learning, that involves curiosity, that involves probably writing some things that aren't going to be great, and like that's just part of the process.
Where do you find a family of communities connected by the storied Mississippi River, where young explorers and dreamers, investors and entrepreneurs thrive? Where can you connect with real people living and creating in a place that's as genuine as it is quirky? QC, that's where.
Welcome to QC That's Where. I'm your host, Katrina, and today I'm so excited to have Ryan Collins, the Executive Director of the Midwest Writing Center right here in Rock Island. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on. The Midwest Writing Center has quite a long history, 40 plus years in our community. I know you guys have made a couple of moves through the years. So right now, tell us where the Midwest Writing Center stands and what it does, like daily functions, in our community.
Sure. So we are housed currently in the Rock Island Public Library in the downtown branch. We're on the ground floor, just adjacent from the really awesome children's section that they have there. We've been there since 2016. And yeah, we're the oldest, I think, only literary arts organization in the Quad Cities. So we do all kinds of programs to serve all kinds of writers from all backgrounds, all experience levels, all genres. We do a lot with youth education, especially in the summer. We have an internship program that we run along with our annual conference. And yeah, we look to partner with other organizations and do anything we can centered around writing and reading and using those things to help improve people's lives.
So we'll put a pin in the annual conference. I definitely want to talk about that. First and foremost, you're involved as obviously the executive director. How did you get into that role, and what is your, daily kind of spin at the Writing Center?
Sure. I served on the board for a long time. My uncle, David R. Collins, was one of the co-founders of the Writing Center way back when. And he passed away kind of unexpectedly in 2001. And my mother and I were invited to join the board. They were just about to get their first location. So that was when my involvement started. And I didn't know anything about nonprofits or much of anything, I guess, really. I was just graduating from college. And so I served on the board for a while. And I started as executive director almost 13 years ago. It'll be 13, or excuse me, 11 years ago this summer. Lost count.
Time goes fast.
It does go fast. It definitely does. And so my day, it depends on what time of year it is. My days tend to look a little different, which is one of the great things about the job. We're always doing different things and we kind of change with the season. So right now, what I'm doing is getting ready for the conference. And we just did all the hiring for our internship program. So we had more applications by far than we've ever had, and we're going to have our biggest group this summer that we've ever had in 18 years. So,
whoa, why do you suppose that is?
I think we made a push. I have really excellent staff, and some of them did a lot of outreach and got a lot more applications. And we just kind of we were trying to have a big summer, so we made kind of a bigger effort. We also partnered with the Get Lit writing contest and program that is run through Western Illinois University in the spring, and they have a bunch of schools participate. It's like a writing contest. They all come and read and things like that. So we gave all the participants copies of the magazine that the internship produces, and
Cool.
sort of just trying to do more community outreach and spread the word, and it worked.
And it worked, yeah.
Worked.
So you guys do a lot with like youth writers, people who are trying to excuse me, maybe make a career or out of it, or hone their passion. What is the like what is the involvement of the Midwest Writing Center and say like young writers trying to reach out to them? What do you guys do?
Sure. Well, this program is it's a paid internship program. So the kids apply, they do a phone interview, they have to provide references, they submit writing samples. So they get a lot of professional experience, but then also a lot of creative experience. I like to tell people it's kind of like a graduate level creative writing workshop crossed with like a summer jobs program. And so the main outcome among many is the publication of a magazine called the Atlas, which they do every summer. And the interns put it together. It's all their work. They promote it. They do a big reading. So they get publication experience. They get critique experience, like, giving each other constructive feedback, giving and receiving, which I think is something that's useful in all kinds of professional applications and situations moving forward. As is like just strong written communication, being able to solve problems creatively, being able to stay on deadline. We have really tight deadlines for the program. So in that way, I think it prepares kids for career in writing, sure, or publishing or whatever, but really it prepares them, I think, for all kinds of different careers. Like, a lot of our interns that we work with don't necessarily pursue writing as a career, and that's a difficult career to pursue. But that experience, I think, is useful in all kinds of applications. So we've had several of our interns go on to PhDs, and none of them in English literature or anything like that. So we get a really diverse mix of students, both in terms of like background and their experience and their interests. And that's, I think, what makes the program great. And it's generally what makes any writing great is, people sort of writing about their lives and what they're interested in and they're passionate about. And that generally comes through in the work.
It's really awesome that right here in the Quad Cities, there is an opportunity for young people. I mean, it really is like a real life workshop, so to speak, where they can get in and see what, one of their potential career fields might actually be like, whether or not you're going to be a writer, like you said. Really good experience regardless. Really nice resume builder too for these kids.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we hope so. We tend to get accomplished applicants. Like every applicant we had would have been a credit to the program. So my decision, it was the toughest decisions I've ever had to make. Like we had so many applications, but we have a limited number of spots.
Yeah,
we'd love to hire everybody, but we are kind of small and mighty. So it's tough, but it's also it is heartening to see how much talent is out there, and it sort of pushes us to think about how we can do more programs and more outreach to serve more of these younger writers. And especially, the internship's 15 and 19 years old, but even like younger writers, I'm trying to get them, the more we can get kids seeing the importance of being able to express yourself, being able to think critically, being able to read critically and creatively. Like, these things are all super important, I think, in the information age. So
yeah, and the conference you guys have coming up, the David R. Collins Writers Conference coming up in June. You're going to hold it at Augustana. That's like on a national scale. You have people come in from everywhere to join this.
Yeah, we usually have people come from out of state. The last few years, obviously, with the pandemic, has been kind of a little weird. We were online for a couple of years. Last year, we kind of did a hybrid format. This year we're kind of going mostly in person, but yeah, we usually get people from mostly around the Midwest, but we've had writers from all over the country. We've had a lot of really notable writers over the years participate. This year we're kind of bringing back some fan favorites, if you will, like people who have taught at the conference before and just received like really outstanding feedback that people were really excited to see come back. And we've got one of Augustana's own professors teaching, one of my favorite poets, Rebecca Wee, is on board for the conference. So yeah, we're super excited to be back at Augustana. It's been a long time. Since I think the last year we were at Augustana was 2001.
Oh my, okay. Yeah. Augustana's if you listening and you have not yet been to Augustana, just to like walk the campus, it's gorgeous. There's so much history there. It's a beautiful college. So great location. They have great facilities for events, all kinds of events, because they have a lot of buildings that host different sizes. About how many people or attendees do you expect at this year's conference?
Well, the workshops we have 4 workshops, and we kind of limit them so they don't get too large, because I don't know if you've ever been in kind of like any kind of creative workshop environment. If it gets kind of too big, it becomes a little more impersonal. And like one of the things we like to do at the conference is have it really feel like it's building community and people are kind of all interacting. So we don't want to get too big. Workshops, we kind of limit kind of around 30 people, but we do several public events, and those we kind of hope are, you know, we live stream those out too. There's a keynote at the Figgy on Thursday, the 22nd of June. And then we do a faculty reading and a participant open mic. So the people who are attending the conference can kind of read alongside of the faculty. And we do that at the fantastic Rostox.
Yes.
They're always very gracious to work with us with a lot of different readings and programs. And so we're excited about that. And then this year we're doing a book fair. So if there are any local authors, publishers, anybody out there that wants to participate, we would love to have you. We're trying to have the biggest possible book fair we can. It'll be on the campus at Augustana. So yeah, we're excited about the summer for sure.
Thinking back to conferences past, are there any highlight moments that stick out that you'd like to maybe try and get to happen again, or have a really nice memory that people can take home, you know?
Sure. I mean, so this will be, I think, the 11th conference that I've worked.
Okay.
So many. They all kind of center around faculty that we've had, because I think they do so much to kind of help foster that great experience, and kind of they spend the most time in the workshops, and that sort of like feeds out into the other events, and hopefully out throughout the rest of the year and other programs. One year, Rachel Yoder, who is like her first novel just hit real big. She lives in Iowa City. She's super fantastic. She brought a hypnotist one day to the workshop, to kind of have people trying to like write in like sort of a trance. It was like probably the most experimental thing that we've done, and it sounds like a little weird, but I love that. I love that like people are open for it and game for things like that, and like. Yeah, it was I've been in all kinds of writing workshops. I've never seen anything like that. But I mean, we've had a lot of highlights. Liz Lenz is another really fantastic author who lives in Cedar Rapids, and she's been our keynote speaker, and she has given a couple of like the most profound readings. And her keynote talk, I think, was in 2020 during the pandemic, and or the height of the lockdown, like when things were like kind of peak intense. And yeah, she's just they're both just such a blessing, and we really appreciate all the fantastic authors we've had an opportunity to work with, and people should definitely go check them out because they're not that far away. They're just down the road.
Is it too late to sign up for the conference? People want to join?
Absolutely not. There's actually an early bird discount going on right now on registration that goes through June 10th. So there's still plenty of room in the book fair. So yeah, people should check it out.
I guess we didn't say the dates of the conference. It's June 22nd.
June 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. So the workshops run all 3 days. And then the keynote is Thursday, the 22nd. Reading is Friday, the 23rd, and the book fair is Saturday, the 24th. And that's when we wrap.
So back it up just a moment. I have to ask, did the hypnotist writing workshop work? What came out of that?
I mean, I think you'd have to ask individual participants.
Okay.
It was just like they weren't trying to get them. If you've ever seen like a hypnotist performance and they get people up in front of a crowd and they make them do silly things, like it was nothing like that. So it was more just trying to get people into sort of like just a different state of mind, kind of just like a almost like a trance a little bit, and to just sort of like write. If you've ever heard of like automatic writing. That sort of thing. So just kind of like stream of consciousness might be another way to kind of think about it, or to kind of get close. So I don't know, like I was kind of an observer. I wasn't actually in the workshop. But I think some people, there were a range of experiences, but it was just cool to see people like, wow, this is kind of weird, but like let's just try this and see what happens. And like it's cool to see people trust great artists, people like Rachel, and just like I think if you're willing to do that at a performance or in a workshop or something like that, you're going to get so much out of it, or so much more out of it, because you're willing to go with the experience and willing to have some trust in like those artists and their brilliance, and like, that they're trying to take you somewhere that's maybe a little different that you might not get to or think of on your own. And that I think is the whole point of a workshop, or just a writing community in general, or an artistic community.
And there are so many different types of writing, obviously. So, experiencing something like that, people can get writer's block so easily, or just, it's easy to think, oh, this is like a bad idea. I'm not even going to see where this goes. I'm not going to see where this takes me. But in a situation like that, where you are fully opening your mind, letting pen hit the paper, whatever it comes up with. I would imagine there was some really profound stuff that like wouldn't have hit the paper otherwise.
I'm sure of that. And I think like um sometimes it takes a push. You don't always have the answers yourself, and that's maybe sort of like a hard thing to accept. But I think like people have this idea of writers or artists that they're just these kind of like idea generating machines, and some people are touched like that. But I think a lot of it comes from just like trial and error and experience and sort of like being in the world and like, okay, well, like I'm doing this thing and I'm kind of getting bored. Like, how do I sort of like change my practice, or how do I like pivot to like a new subject matter? Like how do and usually that involves learning, that involves curiosity, that involves probably writing some things that aren't going to be great, and like that's just part of the process. I think every artist has the like I'm a musician too, and like you're going to have scratch tracks. Like songs don't just come out of most people's heads like fully formed and perfect and great.
Right.
And so like the audience doesn't see that process, but that process is super important and generative. And I think it's people are surprised when they sort of give themselves over to it a little bit more, what they're capable of, because they end up doing things that they might not otherwise, because they didn't have this push or this information or this prompt or did this reading or worked with this person that sort of like, it's like, well, maybe try this direction. And it's like, oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
And it's like, we have all this permission, but sometimes we need people to remind us that we have permission to try these different things. And if you're willing to like make mistakes and like have drafts that aren't that great, which I think if you want to be good at anything, that's the nature of trial and error, right? It's like you're going to have a lot of error probably before you start to get good and get to where you want it. So yeah.
What's your background in writing?
My background in writing, I write poetry mostly. Like that's kind of like what I've done professionally. I've got an MFA from Columbia College in Chicago, and since then I've published a lot of poems. I've got a few chapbooks. I published a book a few years ago, and so that's kind of my background. It's mostly poetry stuff.
You've been writing your whole life?
Yeah, since probably about like middle school, something like that. I don't exactly remember when, but like my dad was an English teacher, my uncle was an English teacher and a children's author, and so like I kind of grew up around books, and so which was great, and I'm so grateful for that. So yeah, I've kind of just like always been around. I don't really remember like I'm going to start writing poems today. Like it probably more came from music. Like the first poems I remember writing was when I started really getting into like hip hop, because I play drums too, so like beats and figurative language, and it just like clicked with me.
Yeah.
They were, I'm sure, speaking of terrible writing, I'm just like, if my mom's out there, don't show anybody that stuff. If you have any of it, like it's terrible. But like, it puts you on a path and it gets you interested in language, and you start listening to things differently and reading things differently, and like, oh, where do people get this idea? And it turns you on to other artists and books and things like that. So that I've just kind of always been on that path, and lucky to still kind of be curious about it after all these years.
Please tell us about your book that you published.
My book, it's called A New American Field Guide and Songbook. It's most of the poems in it are pretty old now. It was like probably written 2009 to like 2013, something like that. It's just sort of about just like living in this country as like a younger person, I guess, or kind of like, yeah, I don't know. It's a strange little book. All the poems are addressed to this new American person. So like, I guess it's sort of like somewhat advice, somewhat sort of like fictionalized American landscape to some degree, but yeah, it's hard to find publishers no longer around, but there might be another version of it coming out someday, but I'm working on other stuff now, so trying to do the work of getting that out in the world, which is long and fraught with a lot of rejection.
That is so hard. I mean, and it's like you're your own worst critic, and then finally when you put something together that you're ready to publish, that is a hard step. Do you work with other writers, people in the community that want to be published? Do you help facilitate that for them?
100%. Yeah. So a lot of the people that we get like walk-ins and people that call are people who have this idea for a book that they want to write. And maybe it's something related to what they do professionally. Maybe it's something like a family history and something they want to leave for, for their family. So like the audiences vary, but a lot of people just like have this urge to like, write a book of some kind. And a lot of times maybe it's like, when they're maybe getting closer to retirement or they have a little bit more time or the kids have moved out of the house or things like that. So we get a lot of that kind of stuff. And like people just don't know where to start or what that looks like. And I think there's a lot of there are a lot of people that can help with there are a lot of like self-publishing businesses out there. I don't know all the time that people necessarily get as much out of them as they think they're going to. And I don't think that people realize that you can kind of do that yourself. Like there's printers around here, there's editors around here, there's terrific designers around here. So like we try to get people connected depending on how they want to publish and what they want to do. We either try to give them as much information for going a traditional route and submitting their work or trying to query an agent or whatever. We do publishing workshops from time to time and things like that. But if they want to try to do it themselves and they want to do this self-publishing thing, or they're just kind of got this idea for something small, we try to refer them to local artists and vendors to get them set up. It's an expense, it's an investment, but it would be it's an expense if you're going to do it through Amazon or through anything else. And if you want it to be, good and you want to feel good about the finished product, it's worth like, having an editor and not just taking the rough draft of the thing that you have and putting it into like, Amazon or like Kindle Direct Publishing or whatever it is. And, spend a little time with it, revise it, like, shape it a little bit, have other people read it and get some feedback on it. And we try to create opportunities for people to do that. So they can at least, so that they can hopefully, whatever there it is they're writing and whoever it is that they're writing it for, that it can be the best thing for them that it can be.
Any highlight books that have come out of, or not even just books, but like published works or anything that's come out of Midwest Writing Center?
Sure. I mean, we do some publishing. We don't we're not we actually we take pitches during the conference. So if there are authors out there that are interested in maybe publishing with us, you can register for a pitch. Recent books, like the magazine every year that we put out with the interns is kind of my favorite. I'm sort of very biased there because I run that program and those kids are fantastic and it's great to be able to show them off to everybody in the community. I always tell people that some of the best writers around here are under the age of 19, and every year they prove me correct. But like the recent books, we published a book last summer called My Cancer Chronicle by Dick Stahl, who was a very well-known person in the Quad Cities. He was the first Quad City Poet Laureate back in the early 2000s. He taught at Davenport Central for a long time. He wrote several really terrific books of poems. He passed away in, I believe, February of 2020. And he wrote this book from the point where he was diagnosed all through his treatment and everything. So all of that is like difficult and hard enough, and then trying to write a book about it as it's going on is just such a like Herculean feat. It's like still really, I've read the book so many times and I worked on it and tried to shepherd it through to publication, and it still kind of blows my mind that he was able to do it. And so that's something that I'm really proud of and happy that we could do. Dick was the first poetry workshop teacher I ever had at the conference long ago when it was at Augustana in like 2000 or something like that. And then we have a book coming out from Shelley Moore Guy later this summer. We worked with her on another book, How Little Billy Learned to Play, which has been great and is, I think we've done more copies of that book than any other book that we published. And this book that's coming out is kind of like her family story. It's called The Family Tree, and it sort of traces her ancestors, I think like her great grandfather. I'm not remembering how many greats, but like traces him from he joined the Union Army during the Civil War, which brought him to the Arsenal. And that's kind of how her family got to this area and set up shop. So it's her kind of telling that story, and it's geared for younger readers. It's got a study guide that sort of like speaks to the history. So there's like a lot of national history, a lot of local history, but like also like a really beautiful personal story, personal history to it. So it's got these kind of like different dimensions, and the illustrations are really beautiful. They're done by Gwen Patton. So we're really excited about that one. We're going to be distributing a lot of copies of that to local schools and things like that, and doing programs around it. And Shelley's just such a force and such an amazing reader and performer and activist and just all around amazing person. So that one we're really excited for. It'll be out later this summer. I don't know what date yet, but we'll
Yeah.
make a noise before it comes out.
Good. Well, that's incredible. You know, hearing these published works and even non-published things that are written, coming out, basically telling the story in real time, like the Cancer Chronicles. I mean, it's a way for not only a person to be able to share their experience, but probably help themselves work through it at the same time, because they're documenting, what's happening, kind of able to get it out, get what you're thinking, get what you're feeling out on paper, so you don't just have to harbor everything that you're going through. I mean, that kind of sounds like it's beneficial to not only everybody who's going to consume it, but the author themselves too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was. I mean, Dick was, he stayed curious and like stayed writing. And so, yeah, I think something like that, when you've like dedicated your life to it,
Yeah.
I can't imagine that it doesn't help and give you some space to sort of like take all of those things. But I think like, to your point, like in a larger sense, like whether or not you're writing for publication, whether you think you're a poet, like I think a lot of people are hesitant to call themselves writers because they haven't like published anything, or they're maybe not interested in doing that. And to me, that's more of an author. An author is someone who writes for a public audience. A writer is just someone who writes, and we all write. We use phones, we use computers. I think everybody writes a little bit more than they think. They just don't think about it as like creative writing or whatever, right? But like even just like a simple journaling practice, like I'm just going to write for 5 minutes a day in a journal. I'm just going to free write about something that I saw, or something that I thought about, or something that's bugging me, or something I'm looking forward to coming up, or whatever it is. It can really help to like, it can help with anxiety. It can help kind of give you some focus. It can kind of help slow you down a little bit. It can help you develop like a little bit greater attention to the world around you and to your own life, which I think a lot of us could use. And so there's this ever growing body of research that really demonstrates how beneficial just a simple writing practice can be. And that doesn't mean showing it to anybody. That just means you doing it for yourself and having the space that's private, because we don't have that many private spaces anymore really either, right? So like having a journal that's just yours that nobody needs to see unless you want to show it to them. I mean, there's many therapeutic practices that involve different kinds of journaling and things like that. And I think like there's obviously a reason for that. And I think people can take that and use that in their life really simply with like, you already know how to write. You don't have to buy like bunch of art supplies or instrument, like I love all those things, but it can be expensive. And like one of the great things about writing is most people know how to read and write at least a little bit, so you already have the basic tools. You just need something to write with and something to write on. And with that, and just giving yourself a little bit of time and a little bit of space once a week or a couple times a week, or maybe every day, maybe build up to it. And it can be whatever you want it to be, but I think that can really make a big difference in people's lives. And I don't think people really realize that. And so that's one thing in recent years we've really tried to like emphasize, that like this thing that you can already do, you can use in this really simple way to like make big changes in your life and kind of help you out, mind, body, and spirit.
Over the last 40 plus years that the center has been here in the Quad Cities, what would you say has been like your one main goal or mission?
Well, our mission is to foster support for the written word and support its creators. And but I think it's just encouraging anybody to write, whether they're writing with a goal for publication, whether they're writing for a goal of trying to get a little more peace of mind, and everybody in between. Yeah, I think it's that, and just trying to celebrate that a little bit more in our community. We have like a great arts community around here, and it's I don't think people sometimes realize how much great writing is around here or from here. We're pretty close to the Iowa Writers Workshop, and I think people like associate that with that place a little bit more, and understandably so. But like There's a lot of that stuff that's going on here, and there's a pretty rich history of that here, and we're proud to be a part of that. But really just to encourage people to use the tools they already have to make their lives as bright as they possibly can be.
The Quad Cities is very fortunate to have the Midwest Writing Center right here, right in Rock Island. How can people get involved? Can somebody just pop in? How does that work?
Sure. So our hours will change after the holiday weekend coming up for the summer, because I'll be at the center every day. So yeah, we're usually there from like 12 to 5 every day during the week. People can find us on our website, www.mwcqc.org. So yeah, you can stop by, you can give us a call. If you want to join as a member, you get discounts on paid events such as the conference. But we're always looking for volunteers. We have a lot of free programs. We try to have as many of our programs be free and open as possible because we want them to be as accessible as possible. So there's a lot of different things going on. We're always kind of looking for new ideas and new opportunities. So if there are people who have ideas of something that they're wanting to see in the community that's writing or reading related and they're not seeing it, like, we would love to hear from you, and we'd love to help make it happen if we can.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for letting us take a peek into what the Midwest Writing Center is all about. At this point, I'm going to throw it back to you and have you fill in the blank. QC, that's where.
You see, that's where we're writing more light into our lives.
I love that. Thank you so much for all of the information about the Midwest Writing Center. I will link that in whatever platform if you're on the YouTube, or if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, wherever you're getting your podcasts. Check the description. I will link the website so you can get plugged into the Midwest Writing Center. Ryan, thank you so much. This is super insightful, and I hope that you have a great conference and all your events this year.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And visit quadcities.com/events to see all the upcoming events Midwest Writing Center has.
Thanks for listening to QC, That's Where, a podcast powered by Visit Quad Cities. Text Visit QC to 38314 for insider events, activities, and updates sent straight to your phone. That's VISITQC, one word, to 38314. Message and data rates may apply.